This video is brought to you by BetUS Sportsbook and Casino.
Well, finally, guys, we have the news on Jahan Dotson on why he was traded from Washington to Philadelphia. Really all the news we have been looking for here, because it is eye-opening, because Dan Quinn has said in the past, because if Jahan Dotson was on the roster bubble as not even a number 3 receiver in Washington during camp, okay, that he wasn't going to be traded. And it happened the other day. Why did it happen? We have news from WIP and, yes, from Brian Mitchell, the ex-Redskins running back that works for Washington staff, an interview with Ike Reese. And I think this is something we really have to look at to see why the Eagles went into this. And we're about to talk about it, so let's get into it.
A killer buried, but not dead.
Darren, we better turn around. Because I've seen enough horror movies to know any weirdo wearing a mask is never friendly.
Yo, what is going on, guys? I hope everyone's having a fantastic day today. So I hope everyone's doing well. Now, the trade for Jahan Dotson was one of the most exciting things. I think, in my opinion, this really took us over the top in a lot of ways, because wide receiver 3 has been a very weak position really since 2017, to be honest with you, or at least in the big moments where, you know, you have players that do well in regular season games. We get to the playoffs and some of these players just totally disappear or don't really thrive in those big moments, or the coaching has just been god-awful, which it was last year. Okay, the wide receiver 3 group this year hasn't really shown much of anything. Unfortunately, a lot of guys have missed time. Paris Campbell has missed a lot of time, just came back, but is it enough? Britton Covey is going to be more of a gadget receiver, a third down receiver, has had a strong camp, has been taking most of the reps the last few days of Eagles training camp. Johnny Wilson has been, in concussion protocol. So guys are missing time. John Ross, probably not going to be the starting wide receiver 3. Potentially could be a special teamer, kick returner for the Philadelphia Eagles. So there's really not a lot to work with here to say that you're set at this position. That, from the beginning of training camp, Howie Roseman did promise that wide receiver 3 is going to be something we're going to be looking at very closely day by day on a daily basis. And it seems like they thought they had it. They didn't have enough. They go out, they trade for Jahan Dotson. They give away, Washington gives away a 5th-round pick. The Eagles give away a 3rd and 2 7ths. The Eagles had an extra 3rd. The Eagles had 4 7th-round picks, so it was very affordable. Okay, we're going to be going into Brian Mitchell, the ex-Washington running back that works for the staff, what he said about this whole entire trade and what has happened. He's around the team. He's around the players. He's in the facility. He knows what's going on with Ike Reese. So the conversation was interesting. We're about to get into that. But before we get into that, here's a word from our sponsors at BetUS. If I'm the betting man that I am and you're rooting for the Philadelphia Eagles, this is the redemption year for Jalen Hurts. This is the year we get the bad taste out of our mouths from last season. If I'm going all in, ride or die with a Super Bowl and bringing that Lombardi trophy back to Philadelphia for a second time, you need to go to BetUS, and I'm not wasting any time with it. I'm putting $500 down as the risk and getting $7,000 back at the end of the year, because this offense is going to be explosive. This defense by Vic Fangio is going to be dynamic. New customers for BetUS get a 125% deposit bonus on your first 3 deposits up to $2,000. You can't pass up on this for the most important season for the Philadelphia Eagles. Check the link in the description below, and I want to thank BetUS for sponsoring this video. Okay, so now getting into Jahan Dotson, the interview between Brian Mitchell and Ike Reese. I tried to upload this on this video so we can all listen to it, but it demonetized the whole entire video, or at least, like, I put up the clip to see if it would get demonetized. Unfortunately, I couldn't put it up. So I'm going to have to read this like a noob, word by word, quote unquote, about what Brian Mitchell and Ike Reese did talk about. Now, Ike Reese did ask a question saying, was Jahan Dotson a good teammate? Did his teammates get along with him? Will he fit in with the culture? So Brian Mitchell says, quote unquote, he's a great guy. He says, I have this little thing where I always say first job mentality. If you're very good at your first job, you got the right to do stuff and act how you want to act. But when your first job stopped being the best thing you could do, then all of a sudden you got a problem. And I think he started to slip a little bit in doing his first job. And then his body language did not look like somebody that's really wanting to compete. Okay? This move was made because there was a mentality issue. That's unquote. This move was made, this is me saying this, because there was a mentality issue with Jahan Dotson. Dan Quinn wanted players to compete. Any type of moping around, which it looks like Jahan Dotson, quote unquote, expected to have his job back. Okay? So now there's a million things you're thinking about now. So obviously Howie Roseman has had talks with Jahan Dotson by now, and they know the situation on what's going on with him and how he's doing. And you know, just think about it. Jahan Dotson was drafted a few years ago, okay? Has dealt with many quarterbacks, a few quarterbacks coming in. He's had a few different quarterbacks already throw to him at this point. Okay. The issue that I'm having right now is that if he comes into the Eagles, like, is he still competing for this job, or is he brought into Philadelphia to be the starting wide receiver 3? Okay. He will not play on Saturday night. Okay, we all know this. And he will have a week and a half probably to get on page, which it might take a couple weeks. Okay, we traded for Chauncey Gardner-Johnson the same time all this was going on. Okay, and it took him a couple weeks to kind of get prepared, get ready. Okay, but you don't bring in Jahan Dotson to be a backup. I highly doubt it. I think you're bringing him in to be the major starter here. Knows knows the whole entire route tree. Could do anything you want. Could play outside, inside. And to be honest with you, from his production, to me, he could be a 1B to a number 2 receiver on a football team right now. But as a number 3, the Eagles are loaded. Okay, the Eagles are definitely loaded 100%. There's no excuse now. So if that's the case, then, you know, look, there are going to be players out there. Okay. Jahan Dotson is still on his rookie deal. The Eagles have literally this year and next year to keep him. So they can keep Jahan Dotson. If he plays well, they can keep him this year for $4.5 million against the cap, next year in 25 for $4.5 million against the cap. And he's got a 5th-year option because he's a first-round pick. So they can always – the 5th-round option might be a lot cheaper to pick up. So technically, they can keep him for 3 years. Howie likes to use those loopholes, especially with the Devontae Smith contract, adding in the 5th-year option. So technically, if they wanted, they have him for 2 years cheap and maybe a little bit more expensive into the 3rd year, which is the option year, counting this year as well. So – if he does well, good things could happen. But I think as a rental for a couple years to see what he could do, that's great. I don't think this is BS. I think this could be true news because I don't think he would lie at this point to say that maybe he was moping a little bit. Maybe he's just fed up with how Washington really hasn't been over that hump to be even relevant. You know, they didn't question Jaden Daniels being the quarterback competitions between Jaden Daniels and Marcus Mariota. They never questioned that going into this offseason, really going into after the draft, going to the offseason program. Nobody questioned that. So he felt like everybody was going to get the same treatment. The guys that have been starting, like McLaurin and some of these other guys, Jahan Dotson being a very good player the last few years, is now starting to see where, you know, if you're not working hard in the offseason, maybe he has worked hard, but maybe during these practices, he has maybe slowed down a little bit. I'm not saying it's happened, but from what Brian Mitchell is saying, he was expected of his job to get his job. And I think Jahan Dotson was kind of questioning, well, you have a new head coach right now, which he said at practice. He was interviewed like last week about it, like, you know, but we were promised he wasn't never going to get traded. Like Jahan Dotson didn't think he was going to get traded at all. But he did say after a practice, like, well, I think I'm a number 2 guy on this team, but they have me as the number 3, or I'm pretty much on the bubble at this point. There's a new head coach coming in. I wasn't drafted by Dan Quinn. So usually when new head coaches come in, sometimes they just, you know, they sense something in a player and they want to get rid of him. So maybe this decision wasn't as hard as everyone expects. I'm hoping he doesn't come to the Eagles and just expect everything coming his way. I think he just needs a new change of scenery. A.J. Brown needed a new change of scenery. I think he will be motivated to be the starter in Philadelphia. I think obviously that's why he's here. I don't see him doing I don't see him being a backup right now. I really don't. And why we have to question that, I have no idea. But I think this is a good thing for him. Some receivers that are just aggravated, and he could have done the last few years. Like, look, I've been one of the top receivers on this team the last few years, and unfortunately, we haven't went anywhere. Sometimes that gutter will run dry, and you're more expecting of things because you've been here longer and you've produced here longer than everybody else. Sometimes you'll get that attitude when it comes to going to these off-season programs. So now Jahan Dotson is going into an offense with a top 5 to top 3 offensive line: Jalen Hurts, Saquon Barkley, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert, and a whole lot of depth behind it. And Jahan Dotson, I think, will not be fazed by this, because if the Eagles thought he had a really bad attitude, I really honestly wouldn't think they'd give up a 3rd-round pick, okay, and a couple 7ths. They wouldn't give up a 3rd-round pick if they didn't think that he was perfectly fine. I think they're blowing this out of proportion a little bit. I think Dan Quinn is just trying to make his resume look better, and he's trying to see what he has on this team. He feels like some players are moping around. He's going to demote those players, even though the talent is there. It doesn't matter how much talent you have. If you're not working the offseason program and you're not beating other guys that you should beat, it's an issue. Olamide Zaccheaus is on the Washington Commanders and stayed on that team, is probably going to make that team right now. The Eagles just never used him the right way. But this is the first time in a long time where we could be very productive at this position. I know I'm ranting at this point, but it's very important to tell you guys that this is why he was traded, because Dan Quinn just said, I feel like he's just not giving us 100%. And if that's the case, then I guess coming to the Eagles, I don't think Howie would make this move if he was like a detriment to everybody's health around the team and he's a cancer and he's going to bring everybody down. And I don't think that's the case. I think this is just this is a player just needs to go somewhere else. It's unfortunate that during your rookie contract, you can't be with the team that drafted you. It's unfortunate, but look what happened to A.J. Brown. Look what happened. You know what I mean? These things happen. A.J. Brown wants to be a Philadelphia Eagle the rest of his life. And usually these guys never sign long-term contracts because they're not homegrown talents. They want different things. But 2-year rental this year, next year, $4.5 million each against the cap is very, very affordable. And so you can keep this wide receiver core relevant with another weapon for the next couple of years. So I want to know from you guys, what do you guys think about this situation, since I've just said it to you, quote unquote, from Brian Mitchell himself that works for the Commander staff, talking to Ike Reese on WIP. I think it was a good thing to hear. Let me know in the comment section below what you guys think. I want to thank BetUS for sponsoring this video. Get 125% deposit bonus on your first 3 deposits up to $2,000. Click the link in the description. Start betting. You're going to make a lot of money this year. This offense better score 35+. I'm telling you. No excuse. And Kellen Moore's going to have a lot of fun using Jahan Dotson. I'll tell you that. So just want to let you know. Let me know how you guys feel in the comment section below. I want to hear all your responses. And I'll see you guys on the next one. Shakes, what up, follow, slide. Peace out, guys. Peace.